welcome all the panelists and all the audience here. Thank you so much. Let me first thank you, FICCI, actually for giving me this opportunity, and more so actually for having this series of webinars which they have been doing for quite some time. I understand the 5 has already happened, and this is the 6th one. And the reason I am thanking them actually because I do not think food intervention or food innovations would have been any more critical than in the time we are going through today. On the one hand, we are passing by such an unprecedented pandemic that probably none of us would have seen in our lifetimes, I can assure you. On the other hand, food habits have rampantly changed actually in the last decade or two, and especially in this part of the world, with the various lifestyle changes in the society. So when it comes to food and nutrition, I personally believe in India we have been living in a state of contradiction. And I am deliberately using this expression contradiction just to explain certain things. First, I know many of you already know that we are growing much more staple food such as food grains and vegetables today. And when I say much more means than what we actually can consume as a country, but still there is a significant population which is forced to sleep empty stomach. And that's to me is a painful contradiction. The another contradiction I would say actually is, while a large number of children and adults are still malnourished, but now we are starting actually seeing a bit of child obesity in this region as well. And while many of you will agree with me that indeed the lack of physical exercise, especially in the kids of our age, compared to what is happening today, children, so they might be playing actually a major role in such lifestyle related morbidities because they are hardly going to they are hardly socializing outside homes today. Most of the time they are in electronic gadgets and all. So while their lifestyle change of the kids must be playing a role in this, I'm sure somewhere there is a need also to look into the food habits, and the kind of foods, the changing, the changing in the food habits is happening. And therefore, the challenge on food scientists, whether food formulators, whether they are marketers, whether regulators, so on and so forth, I think is to innovate foods that can not only help nourish the society, but may also play a prophylactic role in preparing the consumers to fight the intervention of at least live a healthy and fulfilled life. And I'm happy that we have Dr. Kanuja with us today, and we have a company representative from MA who are expertise in making the supplements, and we have representation from the kind of intervention we can do in protein. We have representation from companies like DSM and DuPont, where they can play that intervention through ingredients. So on another very simple note, I also believe that a very important aspect we have gradually ignored in our society is the use of lesser known crops and vegetables, including I would say even wild vegetables or fruits actually that once we used to use, especially in the rural India. I still remember when I was a kid, one of the brothers of my father, which he called Tayaji. My Tayaji used to, force us to go to nearby forest in the rainy season to fetch, a fern and a morsel called a fungus called morsel. We used to call it gucci there. And he used to tell us that more and more you eat that during the rainy season, more you will be prepared for the weather change during the winter, and it will help you to increase your. Of course, he was never using the word immunity, but this is what he means, that अंदर से आपको ठीक करेगा and you will be okay. Actually, you will not get kind of cold and cough during the winter. And it took me actually, several years till I opened my scientific eyes to realize that, the Morsella esculenta is the scientific name of that fungus, is how much, the kind of intervention it is playing in terms of being antioxidant, being an immunomodulatory and all. So I think that's a huge, big area which we need to look into, especially sitting in this country, that, over the times we ignored. Of course, it is coming back in a different avatars now. So we have quinoa, we have some of the lesser known millets actually already available in the market, but it's still not available for the masses. So that's one area probably we need to also think of. And then probably last thing I wanted to touch upon is, before I invite my panelists, is about the farmers. And without going into the political dimensions of it, I think as a diverse community that is represented in our panel today, we should also dwell upon to some extent on the aspects of how we can make the food sector more rewarding for our farmers so that there is a win-win situation for industry, for farmers, for trade, and largely for the consumers. Yeah. So considering all those thoughts, in my view, food innovations shouldn't just be seen as an opportunity, but also as a precondition to assure the sustainability of all encompassing food sector. So I don't think we could have any better panelist combinations to discuss this subject today. So let me take this opportunity to briefly introduce our panelists, and I'm not going into too much of details with their kind permission because those have already been circulated to all the attendees today. But let me just start with Dr. S.P.S. Kanuja, who is an accomplished scientist. He got his superannuation from the position of a director CMAP, which is a CSR laboratory in Lucknow. And now he is a founder and chairman of a science foundation called uh, Flora Fauna Science Foundation. So welcome, Dr. Kanuja, and great to see you after many, many decades, at least many, many years, if not decades. Mr. Barun Deshpande serves as a managing director at the Good Food Institute, GFI India. My request to people here actually just please keep yourself on mute so that there is no background noise. Thank you so much. So yeah, Barun comes from Good Food Institute, which is GFI India, and where he has focused on building the future of food by working with scientists, foundations, governments, entrepreneurs, and corporations on advancement of the alternate protein sectors. So we'll certainly hear from Barun on the protein part. Then we have Mr. N.B. Sridhar, who is a Senior Business Development Manager for Asia Pacific at DSM Rice Fortification Business, one of the important aspect which our both governments and activists are and industry is very keen to build this area. So we'll hear from Sridhar on that area. And then we have Mr. Mihir Joshi, who is Marketing Manager, South Asia for DuPont Nutrition and Bioscience. And Mihir drives his customer excellence based on the consumer insights. So I'm sure we all have to learn from him his experience of the consumer insights and how we can leverage those insights actually into making a difference for the consumers. And finally, we have Abhinav Srivastava, who is a head regulatory policy and intelligence at Amway. And with his rich background of working with pharma as well as food sector, you'll be able to cover the areas on how best we can utilize resources in terms of making a difference with consumers using the food supplement interventions. So what I plan is I would just first go to each of the panelists and request them to give their, top of the mind thoughts for maybe 2 minutes. And then once we have done that, then we'll have a second round where we can go into little more details, where I will also invoke the panelists actually to go into their own area of expertise and dive little deeper then. So with this, may I then request Dr. Kanuja to open up and give his key remarks, and you have 2 minutes, Doctor.
Okay.
And rest I will request, please keep yourself on mute so that we can properly hear the speaker. Thank you, Dr. Saab. All yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dobrian. It's nice to be in this panel and also on such an important issue that makes a lot of sense, not only in this epidemic situation, but otherwise also all the time. When we say food, it gives me an idea of a value chain. Food begins with agriculture. So if we are not understanding agriculture, food cannot be produced. And agriculture to food, and then food, when we say food and nutrition are linked. So we did a mistake when green revolution happened, that we ignored nutrition and concentrated on food, and that's why some of the consequences today we are seeing. There was a shift in the consumption of the type of food, and we started eating rice and wheat based foods only, while today what we are calling as nutraceutical foods, we ignored them. And obviously then nutrition is related to health. In today's theme, you are talking about food processing. Food processing is again linked with agriculture, and therefore I would say that agriculture goes into two domains. One is primary agriculture, that is where you cultivate and have a produce of grains or some parts of the plants. And on the other hand, you have processing of that, and that is called secondary agriculture. And as Dr. Dobriyal pointed out, today's situation with the farmers, perhaps we have to bring them into secondary agriculture from primary agriculture so that value of their produce goes up and they themselves become corporate and don't have to depend on MSP or anything. And that is possible. So that is one thing. And other is I would definitely like to refer to one of my mentors, Dr. Norman Borlaug, who was a man behind Green Revolution. He met me in the field when I was doing my master's and I was doing breeding of wheat. He said certain things. I have just made that into a sentence. And the sentence is that plants don't speak, they just whisper. And you therefore you have to be very close to them to understand them. So idea was that you have to understand plants from very close perspective and then you can do wonders. Of course, at that time he was talking in terms of dwarfing genes which could be incorporated into tall varieties of wheat, and we could get green revolution where multifold increase in yields happened, and then also that was repeated in rice. But on the other hand, we have to look at agriculture or food not only as production system. It has ABC, agriculture, biology, and chemistry, which we have to follow. And once we start looking into chemistry, I think that's the whisper he was referring to, or what I understand. And that's where we see that the plants, they can give you health benefits, medicinal values, and so on. And therefore, you can change the spelling of food into double F, double OD, the functional foods. And also, if a farmer starts doing for functional foods, and then we think in terms of formulating such health foods, there is a possibility of changing the spelling of farming also from FARMING into PHARMING, farming. That means farm becomes a pharma. And that's what I would dwell on later when we discuss more in detail, and also the opportunities that we have ahead of us when we talk of food processing and food formulations. And functional foods is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you so much for your initial thoughts. And Barun, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. And thank you once again to FICCI for having us. And thank you, Dr. Khanuja, for those immensely enjoyable remarks. My name is Varun Deshpande. I'm Managing Director of the Good Food Institute India, as Mr. Dobriyal said earlier. We are a non-profit, part of a global network of non-profits across the world focused on accelerating the alternative protein space. And the reason that this space has come up as one of the primary areas of food innovation globally is a point that Mr. Dobriyal made earlier, which is sustainability and stewarding planetary as well as human health. We are currently coming out of, again, as Mr. Dobriyal said earlier, a very tumultuous year. So this is a very appropriate time for us to be having this conversation. As we build back better from the pandemic, we have this opportunity, this obligation to investigate food systems that are better for people and for planet and for profit. And that's kind of what the alternative protein sector represents. It's a diversification of the protein supply to include things like meat, egg, and dairy replacements made from plants or cultivated from cells or made from microorganisms. These are alternative production methodologies which are vastly better in terms of climate change, in terms of food insecurity, in terms of antimicrobial resistance, zoonotic disease, etc., etc. They basically mitigate all of those risks. That's why we focus on this area. Of course, in India, this is quite nascent, but it's extremely exciting. There's a a cadre of entrepreneurs and large corporations looking at this space as a major opportunity. And it's not, of course, only for profit, as Mr. Dobriyal said earlier. I love to echo his remarks here. It is about stewarding the planetary health as well. So I'd love to continue speaking about this. And we have wonderful other panelists on this session today as well who are working in this area like we do.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you so much. And maybe we can hear from Sridhar now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Extremely happy to be there in this panel today. My name is Sridhar. I work for DSM. And as Dr. Khanuja talked about the agriculture and Dr. Dobriyal, as you mentioned, the micronutrient deficiency, I'm really fortunate to work on this segment where to address this, both the points what you touched upon. Today, I really look forward to talk more on that. As just to give a bit of a kind of introduction, DSM, it's a global purpose-led science-based company. We are active in nutrition, health, and sustainable living. DSM's purpose is to create brighter lives and doing something meaningful. Today we are talking about a subject on innovation, which is very close to our heart. What we come up is the unique approach or unique solutions which are commercially viable, which are sustainable in the industry, and to address the major issues what we have globally, as well as if you talk about the India also, we are also facing the similar challenges, right? So one of them is the micronutrient deficiency where I work in, and this is something which we need to, this is the time where we need to address, right? And for this, we selected the staple food fortification is one of the vehicle to address. Because this is the most effective and cost-effective solution to address this issue and to increase the population's nutrition intake. This is just by adding small quantity of your vitamins, micronutrients as needed to address this issue. And we strongly believe in innovation. Before people think about it, we already start working on developing not only the technologies, but also the vitamins, the micronutrients suitable for those technologies. Because each one, like today, when we talk about the fortification of staples, like in India, we have 5 staples, right? Each staple is different. Each staple can take a certain amount of vitamins, certain type of vitamins. So we work on that innovation before a way ahead of it's actually coming up. So there we invest. And while innovation is an imperative for DSM, the purpose is also very important. So we work on novel ideas where we can integrate both the innovation and also the purpose. So today I'm here, this is one of the example, that is the rice fortification. I work for the rice fortification for the Asia Pacific region. I'm really looking forward to actually learn from the panel and also contribute where what we are doing, how we are trying to do it, what's happening in India. So I'll be getting into more detail. So really look forward. Thank you so much, sir. Back to you.
Thank you so much. And let us now invite Mihir actually to give his,
Thank you. Thank you for the privilege, FICCI, and Mr. Rajendra for this opportunity to be part of this conversation. I would probably start by saying that I'm a marketing manager and hence I'm always focused on the consumer. And perhaps I think the biggest revolution that we are seeing today from a food ecosystem perspective is the change of thinking of the food ecosystem in a linear manner and bringing on the design thinking aspect of it to actually work together, all of us at the same time, to address the consumer needs better. And just as a way of example, let me share with you perhaps the fact that DuPont today is conducting a healthy aging research in collaboration with our customers. So instead of going to them with the final output of the research, we are actually taking them along for our consumer immersion so that we can actually ideate together and then come out with products that really make sense for the consumer. And net, that actually adds to the benefit for the consumer because he gets what he wants much faster. So one of the key things as a food ecosystem that I believe we need to do is to bring out these products faster by having stronger collaborations. And I would quote just one more example here that I've seen work really well. I've been really lucky, I would say, to meet Varun and work with GFI. And we've been actually doing a lot of great work together along with customers, especially startups. I think Varun's team does a fabulous job of giving them the fuel that they need and actually helping us also as big corporations to identify these stars who are going to come out tomorrow so that we can actually help them come out faster with great products. And that's exactly the kind of collaboration and partnership that we look forward to as DuPont. That's what we want to look forward to as well going forward. Now, since we are talking about trends, very quickly, I'll touch upon a trend or two. Essentially, all of us know the key thing for consumers still continue to be taste and the organoleptics of products that are there. Convenience continues to be actually very important. The only difference perhaps today is that instead of out-of-home convenience, consumers are now looking for more in-home convenience. And we'll probably talk about it a little later. But I think perhaps the key thing that is the talk of town today is health. And one key aspect, if I may share it through a recent conversation, I was lucky to be in a conversation with the managing director of a big MNC food company. And I was having a conversation asking him why have they not considered actually going after this whole immunity trend that we are seeing in the market. And what he said really stuck me deep. He said, here it's, in his opinion, he said, it's very irresponsible to just put out a product there with some kind of accepted consumer norm saying this is good for immunity without any backing for science. And he said, if you have the science for it, bring the product to me and I will launch it. Now, that's exactly, I think, one of the big missing pieces that I've not seen only from a lot of products in the market, but even from the consumer end. And I think that's a big missing gap, which DuPont actually tries to fulfill as we actually try to address issues from both sides. One is to have a product which has a good scientific backing. So for example, all of you, I'm sure when you go for your annual health checkups are often told, hey, your cholesterol level is high. How many of people are aware that if you actually have suprasoy protein products, then your cholesterol level can come down. And it's a scientifically shown fact. It's not a random piece of information that's put up. So those are the kind of things that we need to bring out in the market so that it actually helps consumers better. But even so, on the other end, from the consumer perspective, one of the interesting things that's coming out is the fact that from, let's say, from the recent healthy aging conversations that we are having with consumers, all of them want good health. All of them are having products for good health. But when you dwell a little deeper to understand, they don't have much to say beyond what good health means. They lack the measures. And that's where I think we as a food ecosystem need to educate them about things like PDCAS, about even things like GI index. There's a lot of discussions about sugar-free, reduced sugar products. Maybe if we bring in that kind of education for consumers, it will mean that the market will also get created for these products. And at the same time, you will actually deliver better health for consumers. And that's what I would like to say for the start. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mihesh. And maybe finally we can just, ask or request Abhinav to share his thoughts, and then we can go into little deeper thoughts.
So, sir,
Abhinav?
you gave 120 seconds to
Yes.
cover everything. So first, fourth, thank you one as chair. Thank you to having me here, and thank you to two fellow panelists of raising such a wonderful thoughts and ideas which they are doing in their space. And fourth is the friends which are connected through digital network. Now, why Amway? Why I'm here? So briefly, I'll about Amway. Looking at new beginnings. But we have a brand called Neutralite, which is 85 years old brand and serving customers in more than 100 countries and as a source of vitamins and dietary supplements. And what we do, we all touch upon in our own ways is to combine best of nature and best of science. Take care of the nature in its own terms by working with farming communities and doing best of science so that consumer gets what they wanted in terms of overall well-being. And so that's Amway, and that's why I'm here. So everyone covered. I'll not get into that, but if I see before we were grappling with three issues: uh, malnourishment, so people are not getting enough food; obesity, so people are getting more; and micronutrient deficiency. So these were the three grappling issues which were there. And now with COVID and after COVID, I think the issues are going even bigger. So these three issues which are there, then the challenges around immunity and also the challenges of healthy aging, and so which makes it even bigger. So all in all, what happens is nutrition is taking a center stage. And since nutrition is taking a center stage, what we as industry, nutraceutical industry, what we are trying to do across the value chain, from selection of ingredients where we look at the sourcing practices which will help farmers in a big way, then going to formulation, design something which makes things on the go for consumers and give them the dietary benefits they are looking at, and then manufacturing, try and have more and more sustainable practices in there, and then finally reaching out to customer, making them aware what is in there, and all of it ensuring the safety, quality of the products, ensuring the claims are well tested, ensuring that the ingredients are of best of quality, and all of this is something which we are doing. But what is for future? Right now, if you see the entire landscape, it is around deficiency. So we give something to overcome deficiency. So if you are not deficient, you are not diseased. While I think the time has come where we need to look at sufficiency model. We give something which makes them empowered to do what we wanted to do in our lives. There are interventions which are needed, which are around a particular life stage, a particular target group, and so that is the need for going forward. And I believe health policies should look at combination of fortification plus supplementation. And I'll quickly quote an example of country called Finland. It's a small country in Europe, but because of sunlight issues, people were deprived of vitamin D levels in their blood. And they started with fortification, but it didn't work out well. And then ultimately they brought both fortification plus supplementation together to overcome this issue of vitamin D. And today they are so positive, not only in levels of vitamin Ds in the serum, but also it is benefiting them in other areas in terms of overall, disease burden. And so this is where I wanted to end, that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So that's where I end my 2 minutes here.
Thanks. Thank you, Abhinay. Thank you so much. Good. So with that warm-up session, actually, what we can now into go a little detailed discussions and all. And the way I think, actually, so when we think of a approach which is commonly referred as farm to fork, I usually I think in Hindi, so I usually refer it as kudal se kadai tak, kudal se kadai tak. So if you see these two ends, farm and fork, there are two extremely important stakeholders. At one end you have farmer who is growing it, at the other hand we have consumers. And therefore I think let's start the conversation from these two ends. So what I'm doing actually now, I'm taking the privilege of calling Meher first, to in a sense, like no matter whatever we do actually in food sector, consumer will always be at a center stage. Yeah, whether it is a scientist like Dr. Khanuja or rest of us from industry, all our planning and strategies and our marketing strategies, our business, our our social responsibilities, they all stem out of the consumers. And therefore I'm taking the privilege of leveraging the expertise of Meher. So Meher, I would urge you, if you can just educate us on what newer trends actually you see coming up with the consumers. You have already dwelled a little bit in your initial discussion on it, but how do you see specifically about the food innovations, and where do you feel that there is a scope for us to really play in food innovations where we'll be able to serve the consumer at large? And also prospectively, how do you see this trend going up with the change of the lifestyle and with certainly with the pandemics and all? So maybe we can, you have around 4 minutes you can take for this session.
Sure. Thanks for that. And probably I'll start off from where I left off, talking about the whole health aspect, because I think that's one of the critical ones that is there. And yeah, I'll start off with a simple one, which is about the whole protein deficiency that exists, let's say, in our daily diets. Now, all of us are quite aware of this, and so are the consumers. And consumers are even trying to eat more protein. The interesting part is post-COVID, that interest in protein has gone multiple fold. We have seen a huge upsurge in terms of demand for our products, but we are also seeing protein entering into newer categories that they have uh, traditionally not been a part of. So today you have protein entering into ice creams, into biscuits, and the whole reason for that is consumers are demanding these products for protein. Now, while consumers are demanding this, the unfortunate part of it is the fact that consumers are not very well aware of the kind of proteins that are available. How do they assess the quality of proteins? And I believe that's exactly where you will see a lot of opportunity for companies to innovate and bring in products which are what I call as complete protein or high quality protein, essentially referring to the PDCAS value of those products. Just to give you an example, all of us traditionally, by our grandmom wisdom, as I call it, we know that almond, for example, is a great protein giver. We are told to have almond because it's going to also help with our brain development. Now, unfortunately, from a completeness of protein perspective, almond scores only a 0.21, whereas a soy protein would be close to 1, and super soy protein in particular would be full 1. Now, the point is, this is something that consumers need to understand, and perhaps we as an ecosystem need to look beyond just the grammage of protein in a particular product to how much is it actually satisfying the daily nutrition value requirement. And that's something that I believe is a trend that we'll see a lot. Interestingly, if you go on to Google Trends, consumers are already searching for this. So when you look at the searches that happen for protein, consumers today are asking for what are the best proteins that are available. So they're already doing that search. And if the company who's interested in launching these products is not careful to look at what the quality of the protein is that they're going to launch with, that's something that could suffer in the market. So that's one for consideration. The other interesting one is, of course, like I mentioned earlier, is the speed of innovation. So one other aspect that's happening, simply because all of us consumers are used to what I call as the consumer rituals. Every weekend, I would love going out on a movie with my friends, with my family. That's gone off the shelf for now, at least till COVID goes away. I would love to go for vacations. That is also out of question. So what do I do to actually feel good about life? Today, consumers are left with only two options. One, on one hand, is, let's say, digital entertainment, and the second one is on food, which is why we are seeing a huge interest in food. And you have consumers trying out a variety of different foods and cuisines, also trying out different recipes. Now, remember, these are consumers who are not used to cooking, because of which they actually need your help. So if you can help them build products which are restaurant quality with all the science to help you out on the texture and taste part, and at the same time make it just a 3-step process or a 4-step process, the product is going to be a hit in the market. And you'll actually see a lot of these kind of products launching a lot in the market right now, be it ready momos or be it any kind of fried foods that are available, frozen fried foods that are available. So I think these are the key trends that if you look at, you would actually see a lot of potential there. Back to you, Rajendra.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much. So with that, let me just go back to Dr. Khanuja again. And Dr. Khanuja, I have two questions for you. One is actually, as I said before the last panelist, that the farmer is sitting at the one end. So one is, I just want to have your thoughts, like how do you feel the kind of innovation which is happening towards the terminal end, which is industry and science? Can we, have innovation in a way that the farmers who is standing on the last row is also benefited? That's one part. But more interestingly, actually looking at the composition of this panel itself has triggered my second question, which is like, we are great to have you here, and we see this composition in a way that there is a scientist and then there are people from industry, and within industry also we have a quite diverse expertise. One area which we always feel like, the kind of engagement, guys, if you can just keep yourself on mute, please. Thank you. So the kind of expertise, Daksa, we see outside, the kind of engagements we see in the Western world between industry and the government laboratories and the universities, we do not see. I mean, as of now, we have not reached actually that level of engagements, and it is very slowly progressing. So any thoughts on that? So farmers' perspective and those engagement perspective, please.
Okay, great. uh, well, let me begin with the genesis of the whole thing for both the questions that you have asked. The genesis is demand. As Mir was indicating certain things, uh, the consumer or the person who has to eat the food is not looking at only what you describe as healthy factors. And when we talk of Hippocrates, who said, let food be a medicine, when we talk of preventive healthcare, he did not say let your food taste like medicine, right? So that's what we have to remember. So I would begin with organoleptic advantages that you have to add into any innovations in food, without which it does not make sense now. And when we say organoleptic, it's not only the taste. It is, first thing is the look. How does it look? And then when I pick it up, how does it feel? And when I bring it near my mouth, it gives me some aroma or smell or that. So how does it smell? And what is its color? If it is like a muddy color, then I may not pick it up. But if it is bright color or things, like red, green, white, and so on, so I like to pick it up. And then the texture, when I put into my mouth and I chew it, I don't feel good or I feel good. It just sticks to my teeth. I will not be eating. So like that, it's a series of the things for acceptability of new food formulation. And that only creates the opportunities both for scientific research, for industrial research, and also the opportunity for the farmers to bring those ingredients grown in their farm, which will be a very different economics than what we are having with only staple food. So I would say that if we are talking in terms of organoleptic advantage that we want to give to the food, we cannot ignore the nutraceutical advantage that we have to have in that. And that means what should we be looking at? And if I take that as the basis, so I can say that farmers need to grow nutraceutical crops. And if we say nutraceutical crops, I would be very happy to hear from a farmer that I am a protein farmer. I am a antioxidant farmer. I am a farmer of omega-3 fatty acid, which is a replacement for fish oil, and so on. So now what does that mean? That means that while we are doing research, industry is telling us this is what is selling. We create the new crop opportunities or new possibilities of processing of the existing crops in such a way that these elements like fiber, your antioxidants, your proteins, your right carbohydrates, micronutrients, vitamins, or their precursors, they are rich in those crops. And if we start looking at that, then obviously with rice, wheat, we need to have millets. And as I was saying in the beginning, that green revolution, we ignored nutrition and therefore millets went out of our platter and only rice and wheat were lying there. But today we are going back into it and we keep hearing about ragi and other things. But then still we have another category which we call as pseudo cereals beyond millets. Now pseudo cereals are not actually the monocots, the typical crops that you grow as staple food, but they serve better than that. They are gluten free. They have micronutrients. They have antioxidants, very good fiber, very good digestibility, and so on. For example, you have amaranthus. Now, amaranthus or Rajgira, it has the protein, which is, if you are talking of the quality of the protein in terms of 8 essential amino acids, it looks the creator created it with the intention to feed it to the humanity. And on the other hand, we think in terms of another domain which goes into integrated agriculture, and that is biohorticulture. Because we have been ignoring the vegetable and fruits which are consumed by folklore or in our ethnic foods, but they are so wonderful. What happens is that we talk in terms of weight management, and then we think, what could be the food that we can eat. But just think of Garcinia. You have kokum, and if you travel from Goa to Dharwad, such a wonderful diversity you have there. And there is a village there called Panda village. Lata Mangeshkar happens to be from that village, and that kokum is able to manage your weight very well, provided you also follow other rules of the proper nutrition. So usually I find in the consumers that they ask, to reduce my weight, what should I eat? I say first thing is stop eating. Then you talk about what to eat beyond that, and exercise and other things are going to be important. So new crops, pseudo cereals is one group. Biohorticulture. In biohorticulture, I would like to mention the name of moringa, sajan. Now, moringa, you must have seen that you have the drumsticks in sambar. My grandmother used to tell me, she used to, she was daughter of a Vaidya in Pakistan when we were there. So she used to tell me that if you have any fever or any disease and you are taking antibiotic, she would say, Dawai, you have this moringa sticks in your food, and it will require less medicine to be given. So that gave me an idea, it might have a bioenhancer. And one of my PhD students could get the molecule called niaziridine, which is patented by CIMA. So like that, we could be thinking in terms of bio-enhancing the availability of all the nutrition in food, and there are so many candidates for that. And moringa is such a crop that can be grown along with all that food crops they are growing, and it has its own economics in very small area. And now with the technology where you could grow with the cuttings and so on, it has become annual crop type. Now I give you another example in formulation, watermelon, right? Now, you know that beyond the age of 60, you need arginine supplementation. Otherwise you have your calf muscles and other start paining up after exercise. But when you give arginine, there are related problems like nausea. But watermelon has citrulline, which is precursor of arginine, and it doesn't give you nausea. So that means I'm not talking of watermelon for beta carotene or other elements, antioxidants or pigments, but I'm talking of citrulline, which if you have in your food, then you don't need to have arginine as a supplement, and or you could create a supplement out of the powder made from watermelon. Similarly, we have pomegranate, anar. Ek anar so bimar, they say that. So hundreds of diseases can take care of. But one of the very good things that I've observed in its chemistry is that the catechins that it has, they are better than tea. So why we can't have a tea out of pomegranate and compete with hibiscus subdarifa, which Africa takes for rejuvenation? So those type of innovations, if we bring, then farmer on the margins of their field will have such crops which require so less water and such a high income they could be giving. So if I convert the farmer into the one who also does semi-processing, that farmer moves from perishable zone to non-perishable zone. Now then these problems of intermediaries, that distress selling would go. They won't have to depend on mandis or anything. They will convert and keep things in their own house, and when the right price is there, they can sell it. So those type of things you could think of. Now the second question that you had posed, Dr. Dobrial, that science, academia, industry, and the technology. Well, I think the time has come up that we have to have village level incubators. When we will have that, And the incubators will be on public-private partnership mode, where industry and the academia or the public-funded organizations work in the farmers' field to give them this processing advantage so that they can add value to their produce and then start marketing that. So that is the answer to that, that we have never thought in terms of even the incubators. They are public funded. That is why most of them are a failure. It again goes into the same style of working. Although I am from public sector, but I know both sides of the coin. And that's why I had taken voluntary retirement at the age of 49 when I was director of CMAP. So I had 11 years to study industry also. And today I know that where are the gaps. And those gaps are that we have lack of trust. The trust is lacking between industry and the technology or the public sector scientific communities. On the other hand, trust is lacking between government and farmers. Now, if we build up that trust, how do we build up that trust? Is again through food. We can have that food formulated such a way that the same crop, they would not like to have selling it on a MSP price. They would like to process it first and then they won't demand for MSP. So we can make these controversial things irrelevant by technology and industry. So perhaps it is a time that we start thinking in terms of the functional foods and nutraceuticals being grown by farmers, and farmer doing farming, PHARMING, farming for health. So farm becomes a pharma. And one of the things that we must remember, most of us are talking in terms of the elements that are required for health, that like, see, I am Suman Kanuja. If I move, 100 trillion cells move. But how many are Suman Kanuja? They are 10 trillion. 90 trillion cells are the microbes inside or outside me. And that's what the era of probiotics is. And if we forget probiotics, whatever you do, whatever nutrition you are going to take, it is not going to work that effectively. So I would say that when we see the pictures of gods and others, you see aura behind them. That aura is their microbiome. It is the good the microbiome, better the aura you can have. So gods always used to have good microbiota. What does that mean? That means they had good gut. And I usually say, to have guts in life, you have to have a good gut. And that gut health, if we want to promote, again there are crops, because what you are doing is a mistake by feeding probiotics to the people. They go in, they cannot compete with our indigenous microbiota, and they are excreted out. We need to give them prebiotics, which are their diet. Prebiotic is the functional food which is not digested by us, but is a good carbon source for our probiotics and is not causing indigestion to us. Although we don't digest them, they give us a physical advantage of bowel movement and so on. So soluble fibers have to be brought in a big way. And some crops which perhaps now time has come, we must start telling farmers, you must grow and then create a value chain for them, are like quinoa, which is fiber and protein both, which is a cereal only. Buckwheat. We can have chia, which is good for omega-3 in addition to flax. And sama rice, sama rice is again a pseudo cereal. They say that in the story of Sudama and Krishna, when Sudama had gone to Krishna, he had a potli yahan banda hua tha. So he was hiding it, and Krishna snatched it and ate it because he used to like it. That was sama rice only, because it was the most nutraceutical thing for poor people. And today it is craze of the very wealthy world. We can change the world if we go on this.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I don't know whether I can see the aura of a god today, but I could certainly see for last 7 minutes the aura of your expertise actually, which is coming as usual. I mean, so many thought-provoking ideas, and I'm sure a marketer like Meher are looking into those thoughts and converting them into their marketable ideas. So that's excellent, excellent. So I mean, I'm really tempted actually to discuss further certain points, but in the interest of time, I'm sure from FICCI would have got many more ideas for individual webinars on those areas. But let me, in the interest of time, go back to Sridhar now. And Sridhar, Dr. Saab has mentioned one point when he was beginning his second round. He said, let food be your medicine, but let it not taste like a medicine. And when it comes to fortification, Mr. Sridhar, then one of the big challenge actually is how do we make sure that the taste does not change.
Yeah.
Therefore, let me invite you actually that being an expert in fortification, and especially your company is doing quite a bit of work in that area. What are those various technologies which are available for the industry to use it? And I'm more keen actually, and I'm sure rest of the audience will be more keen to also understand how is the overall perspective going on after FSI has made that fortification regulation recently. So how is that progressing? So if you can just develop on the technology and how it is going up, what do we see actually tomorrow or day after and day after that coming in this area? Thank you so much.
Sure, sir. Sure. I'll try my best. I'll try my best to address the questions. Maybe at the interest of time, I'll focus on only certain areas on it, and let me speak. So maybe let me get started with the way in India it's almost 60% of the people we eat rice, right? So the lifestyle of our each individual has changed so much. It is very hard to integrate all the vitamins and also micronutrients required on a daily basis. So this staple food fortification, probably this is the best way to do it. Again, putting into the question of which one to add, because in the beginning I said that we also do quite a bit innovation on what kind of vitamins, because each one is a carrier. You are taking the vitamins or micronutrients to the consumer. So let me focus a little bit more on the rice fortification, the way it is being done today. Rice fortification is basically, it's a post-harvesting, right? Post-harvesting fortification, where after, while milling the rice, you get the brokens. So the brokens are taken, and then the brokens are ground into the flour. And in the flour, you are going to add the vitamins and micronutrients required. In India, there is a specific, in every country, there, and either you want to address to any specific market needs, then you add it. Then it is done with a hot extrusion process, which DSM and Buehler patented a process to get the best kernels. Again, the kernels, just to answer your question, it should cook like rice, it should taste like rice. Should not be any change in that, because as Dr. Khanuja said, if there is a change, if there is a color, if there is a taste difference, people are going to reject it. So we want to keep it as close as to the regular rice. And once these kernels exactly looks like rice, it cooks like rice, and there is, if the regular rice cooks in, for example, 10 minutes, this also cooks in 10 minutes. And at the end of it, what you do is you take 1% of the kernels, the fortified kernels, add into the regular rice, and you blend it. And after blending, you cook as usual. There is no change in the behavior, right? So this is very simply, this is the rice fortification process where there are different technologies are available: dusting, coating, and also the extrusion. There are, in extrusion, there are cold extrusion, hot extrusion processes. But the most popular one today, what is being used across the globe, is hot extrusion. A couple of advantages in it, because each region cooks the rice in a different way. Some people soak the rice, some people rinse it, some people rinse once, some people rinse twice. The micronutrients are really embedded into your the kernel. So that's why after cooking also it retains its value, and when you consume on a daily basis, this is going to help on our body. And there are two types of the way to market here is, one is what we call social safety net, the government support. The other one is the voluntary. So in India as a country, when you take, there's almost 98 million tons of rice which is consumed in India. And in that, almost close to 34 million tons is supplied by the government. That's in PDS, ICDS, MDM, there are 10 or 15 schemes where government gives that. It is at a subsidy, and there are different ways of doing it. So government is doing a fantastic job on that. The second part, when you take out the 34 and the premium rice, maybe a couple of percentage, the major chunk is the regular rice, which is available in loose or in the market, where people like you and me, anybody of us, we buy, right? So So these are the two. And in globally, if I touch base, there are 7 countries which has already mandated the rice fortification. But countries like India, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, Myanmar, Philippines, these are the countries where the voluntary, when you walk into a store, you can get it. And there are different World Food Program also came up with different formulation. As far as the government, when you talked about the policy, I would like to mention very specifically here is that FSSAI has done a fantastic job on this fortification of staples, especially on the rice part. If you say there are 2 specifications which is very clearly defined, and with the plus F logo. So it is being very clearly done, and they are doing their bit to see that how this can be pushed. There are television commercials, there are WhatsApp videos, there are social media, there are co-literals, which is more than 13 languages, which is being done, and today it is being going through all around. And the discussion is also with the government organization and FSSAI is how to mandate the rice fortification. Of course, looking at the country, looking at the value chain, what we have our own challenges. But again, this is what where the private sectors, and today the capacity buildup. Till yesterday, we were talking about rice fortification is a subject like, okay, how does it do it? Is there any case study or not? But today, I think enough case studies are there. Today, we are talking about scaling of fortification. The government today, what they are doing is how can we build our capacity on the producing the fortified kernels, because if it is to be mandated, there is a backup support from the industry to support the fortification, right? So what DSM is doing on this, of course, yes, globally, we are going ahead with the footprint on rice fortification. We have invested in Costa Rica. We have a state-of-art plant in Thailand, and now in India we have a plant in Hyderabad, which I would be proud to say that this would be the one of the biggest and only Bueller plant to showcase the best kernel, how it looks like, how the vitamin retention happens, how the shelf lives are decided, and we want to show the industry that everything is possible. There are on the innovation part, when I'm talking on the rice fortification, not only the guided variation, which is there is a specification like in India, the basic formulation says iron, folic acid, and B12. But today, the countries in the ASEAN region where people are launching rice for heart health, for example, now on the post-COVID era, today we are talking about the buzzword is immunity, right? This is something which everybody talks about. When we look at, as Mihir said, the social listening, when we look at the people try to understand what should I do to increase my immunity, my family, my children, my parents. So, and what I should eat, right? So this is immunity is one thing where the DSM from the scientific background, we can fine tune the formulation to address that, whether it is complete nutrition, whether it is immunity, whether it is child health, whether it is elderly people. That is the science what we are bringing, and we are partnering with the millers in India to launch a product. So what to do if I say how quickly we can launch the products in India so that anybody walking into the store, they can also see the fortified rice bag on the shelf, right? So yes, government is supporting on the regulatory part, the policy part, the awareness creation. Today, probably the consumer doesn't know what is right fortification. So that is something which we are taking help of the government, and from the private side, like company like DSR, we are trying to get the best technology, best product to the market, so that people will see that and they don't see the difference while they eat. And this has been tried with various. We also did quite a bit of testing on the sensory. We have a state-of-art lab in Singapore where 1%, 2%, 3%, 4% additions have been tested with fully loaded formulations, and to see that whether the consumer can feel the difference. So based on that, whether it is ferriparophosphate, whether it's any vitamins what we are adding, they are fine-tuned and seen that how it can go into the rice without changing much of the color, as close as to the rice, but still gives what we need. So this is a bit of overall what I wanted to share on the rice fortification, what's happening globally, and what DSM is doing. Back to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Sridhar. So it's really great, great enlightening session. So now, Mihir has first mentioned about the need of supplementing diets. Then Dr. Khanuja gave us more than a dozen different options, actually, which probably we may not have even thought that what are the areas, including the local health traditions, which we can leverage for making supplements. And then finally, Sridhar has given a very good, enlightenment about the fortification and overall. And the great thing is the government is supporting it actually, and not only the regulators, but even there are other government sectors who are supporting it. So with that, I think as a global supplement company, how do you think that supplement can help our consumers? And Amway is a well-known company operating in India for I guess for around 2 decades now. So how
Yeah,
do you
2
think
decades.
that the supplements can really help actually supplement people their diets? And my question is also specifically considering the current situation of pandemic, where the immunity as a center stays. So your thoughts on that?
Okay. So I think I take the point where I was covering my 2 minutes. So what we are doing as Amway, we've been doing for long time. What we are trying to do is bring vitamins, minerals, fruits and vegetables into compressed formats, and vitamins and minerals, we know they are needed for good overall well-being, but fruits and vegetables also play a very important role. uh, as per WHO also, one should consume 5 servings of 400 grams daily of fruits and vegetables to avoid non-communicable diseases. And as Amway, we did a survey with ICRIAR, and what we found is in India, right now, the consumption is around 3 to 3.5. And that too, it is backstory. Currently, if all of us analyze us in a way, how much you have eaten breakfast in terms of fruits and vegetables, just see yourself. I think none of us eating it. And globally also the situation is same. And then this third part is botanicals. I would like to, say that FSSAI has done a commendable work in terms of creating a landscape which which helps us marry the botanicals with these formats to enable the best of their benefits to consumers. And I think during this COVID time also, the botanicals have certainly helped many of us in terms of, be it tulsi, holy basil, be it ashwagandha, be it all those botanicals which are really needed to boost your immunity on one side. Second side is also to contain your stress. You've been home for a long time, so ashwagandha just not help you doing boost up your immune system. It also helps you keep calm. So there are a lot of things which has happened where botanicals have also come in upfront. What I trying to say is, what as organization we are now doing at. So one part is the conventional way of getting these vitamins and minerals. But now, not only us, but across the industry, we are looking at customized solutions, which are more towards a set of a community, or set of a group, or a certain target age group, or certain uh, you know conditions of life. So there, what we are trying to do is to customize those offerings in terms of customized in terms of packaging. So they are kind of, you bring in all of those things together, like someone needs protein, someone needs a specific supplement, so we combine it. And that's another trend which is right now happening. And the journey forward from here is more around personalized nutrition, where as the awareness go up, we also wanted to understand how I am from inside, in terms of where I'm lacking, and what are the interventions I could look at. And a lot of efforts are happening right now. It is yet to start, or very small steps happened in that space, but a lot is happening globally, which is around personalized nutrition. You go through a questionnaire, and then gaps are identified, and accordingly something is recommended suiting your requirement. Or You look at microbiome, which was covered by Dr. Khanuja also, that what are microbiomes are good for health. This science has very well proven, and even a lot of study has happened in India also. What are the good microbiomes can brought into your system in terms of probiotics or their food which is prebiotics? So those things. So there are startups who are looking at that space, that what are the gaps there and how could we try and improve those through a microbiome tailored solution. Similarly, blood biomarkers, if someone is lacking on vitamin C, or someone is lacking on vitamin D, how do we improve those things? So these are the kind of journeys which are going to happen in a longer term. In terms of right now, we are mostly masses, then slowly and gradually it will be around some bit of customized, and then ultimately I think it is going to be personalized. So these are my submissions in terms of what we are doing in terms of generally and overall with respect to the consumer at large, what they are looking at. And last point I wanted to mention is, over the decades, through economic assessments, it was found that 10 years of our life lost in managing disease or disability. We added 40 years to our lives since independence, but it is not keeping a pace with quality of life. So that's where I submit my submission. Yeah.
Thanks, Abhinav. Thanks. Very, 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 very informative, very useful. Yeah. So now let me just go to the Barun, and Barun, I purposely kept you actually for last, because the reason for that is actually wanted your views specifically on protein part. And say we basically are, as a country, we are largely a carbohydrate consuming community. Yeah. Protein deficiency is always the talk of the town. Ever since I've opened my eyes, I've been listening, from dietitians, from nutritionists, that protein deficiency is an area which we need to look into. And now, not only globally, but in India also, we are not discussing about plant-based proteins, which is also taking a center stage. So how do you see this space shaping up, and where do you see us going as a country in this area? That's one question. And also, I'm keen to know, especially if there are some efforts being made by the scientific community or the industrial science, industrial research and development, the kind of specific amino acids that are unique to our flora, as Dr. Khanuja alluded to earlier. Are there any efforts we are making actually to leverage those amino acids and in making a difference to the consumers? So all yours, Varun.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all the other panelists for your remarks. It makes my job much easier here because those lenses are great to provide. I will say one thing. So we focus specifically on a piece of the protein equation. We focus on meat, egg, and dairy made from different ingredients to effect a protein diversification, right? And I want to get to, I'll zoom in and get to the question in a second. But the reason this is all happening is because there's this major big question that everyone in the audience, every one of the panelists cares about very deeply. It is, how are we going to feed and nourish 10 billion people by the year 2050? 1/6 of whom will continue to be in India, over 50, 60, 70, 80% of whom will be in Asia plus Africa, but do it without breaking the planet, right? This is a major problem that is being faced by industry, by governments, and is increasingly becoming a major decision-making point for consumers in the way that they consume. Unfortunately, business as usual on the protein realm is not the way to get us there, right? Because we do have a very resource-intensive way of producing proteins, especially meat, eggs, and dairy currently. We use an inefficient protein production platform of animals, which is where all of this plant protein and everything is coming from. So if we can effect that protein diversification, it would be fantastic for people, planet, and profit. And I would say, especially in India, we've taken a very active and vocal role. The Prime Minister said this just last week again, in adhering to the Paris Climate Agreement, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the Eat Lancet Commission, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, all have said that we have to look at this area if the world is going to meet the Paris Climate Agreement goals. So that's why we focus on this area. And in order to satisfy consumers, just to borrow from Dr. Khanuja, what we are doing cannot taste bad, right? It cannot taste like an inferior substitute for meat, eggs, or dairy. It has to taste the same or better, and cost the same or less. It has to not feel like medicine. It has to be vastly better for the planet, and it has to nourish people. Now, that's a very high bar to set. But what's really interesting is globally in our space, there are some proofs of concept that are being taken forward. So as an example, the US is the prototypical very high meat consuming country in the world and contributing a lot to greenhouse gas emissions, etc. for that reason. If you replace just one of the 3 animal beef burgers that Americans eat every week with a Beyond Burger that is made from plants, but which tastes, smells, cooks, sizzles, etc., just like a regular cow's beef burger, that is the equivalent of taking 12.2 million cars off the road or powering 2.3 million additional homes. And in studies by Stanford Medical, etc., it's also shown to reduce cardiovascular risk, etc., etc., etc. Right? So these are proofs of concept for what is possible. Now, zooming in on the question Dr. Dubeyal asked, and especially on the Indian context, we do have everything we're discussing, as all the other panelists have said, set against the backdrop of tremendous challenges, right? We have a demographic dividend, the youngest country in the world, but also the highest cohort rates of malnutrition, iron deficiency anemia, neural tube defects stemming from folic acid deficiencies, protein energy malnutrition, as has been highlighted by Mr. Dubeyal and the other panelists, etc., which means that that demographic dividend turns from an opportunity into something else, right? It reduces our population's ability to shape our country's destiny and their own destiny, which is tragic. So the kind of work that's ongoing in this area, whether it's in our space, meat, egg, and dairy replacements, or otherwise, is to look at plant proteins, microbial sources of protein like fungi, microalgae, etc., and look at them for organoleptic properties, for functional properties, for nutritive properties, and try and come up with complete protein blends. Dr. Khanuja would appreciate this, right? We have to think in terms of protein completeness. We have to think in terms of the idea that if we're going to replace something else, or if we're going to plug a demand for something else, we have to make sure that it is absolutely satisfying everything: taste, price, health, convenience, everything, right? So there's a lot of work ongoing in institutes. I think ICRISAT was mentioned, other NIN, other nutrition institutes across the country to look at. We are doing some of this research as well, blends of soy protein and millets, so you get both the protein completeness as well as the micronutrient element, and then take that through to the end product stage. So whether it is, I think some other people mentioned protein is making its way into everything, right? So snacks, flours for rotis, extruded chips, etc., or it's what we are working on, which is plant-based meat, egg, and dairy replacements. Can we get nutrition complete blends, right, which also function really well in those end products, so that those products can succeed in the marketplace and are accepted by consumers as well? But just to add one point, and to echo Mr. Dubeyal and Dr. Khanuja, we need much more multi-stakeholder collaboration. I'm very grateful to Sridharji, to Abhinav for the wonderful work that Amway DSM are doing on fortification. We need collaboration among scientists, government, industry, entrepreneurs, universities for coursework. We need to really take this as an obligation and an opportunity for us over the next decades to build a more healthy, sustainable, and just food system.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you so much. I think we have a wonderful session. Unfortunately, we are running little slow, so we have we need to give some time to our audience also. So I'm not taking too much of time to conclude, but one thing is very clear actually. No matter who was the panelist, actually one thing which was time and again sort of bringing in my mind was the term synergy, or the collaborations, or the teamwork. I feel, if we have to make a difference for a country like India, if we have to make a difference for the farmers on the one hand and consumer on the other hand, then I absolutely agree with all of you that the synergies are extremely important, whether it is between science or industry, whether it is between technologies and the industry, whether it is between farmers and industry and the scientists, or whether it is between local health traditions or industry and the technologies. But I think we need to have those synergies, and leveraging the technology is the only way forward to make sure that we do the kind of innovations the country is demanding from us. So I will stop here and go back to Priyanka for the, if there are some questions and answers. Unfortunately, we don't have too much of time, but maybe we can take 3 or 4 questions before we close. Priyanka?
Yes, sir. We have one question from the audience, is that is there anything related to innovation in food processing for reducing the wastage of fruits and vegetables which are not consumed?
Excellent question. So let me my natural choice would be actually again Dr. Khanuja, who has a great expertise, who has seen this area from both from public sector as well as from the private sector. So Dr. Khanuja, your thoughts on that, please.
Okay. It's a question which is the base of what we are doing, and perhaps if we all start thinking like that, nothing would be wasted. And let us come out of a mindset that what we don't eat has to be composted. Usually what is happening is whatever we don't eat, we start composting it. I did one experiment with a waste of soybean milk. Okay, when we make soybean milk from the seeds, what is left as residue is called okara. Now that okara can make very good poultry feed on one hand. On the other hand, it also is a base to ferment the probiotics and go into a continuous fermentation at a very cheap cost compared to the media that you require otherwise. Second trial that I had done was that I have collected the waste from juice vendors. Okay, so when they take out the juice, a lot of pulp is thrown out, and very good veterinary diet can be made. In fact, better than pedigree sort of a monotonous food. You could be supplementing that and making it into veterinary as well as feed for cattle. So other way that to do these things is that we can do specific extractions from these wastes. So those could be the way out. Particularly, today we are talking in terms of antioxidants. We are talking in terms of precursors of, let us say, beta carotene for vitamin A, for things like that. All these are lying in these, unused parts.
Yeah.
And one of my students is doing research on the waste that we have on custard apple, and that custard apple peel, so much of that we throw. I feel very sad when we are throwing it. So we are looking at some of the biocontrol agents from that for agriculture. So there are many ways, many directions in which we could be going, and it is possible to do that.
Yeah. So is there any other panelists who want to shed any more light on this area?
Sir, from my side, I actually there are many government programs. There are many universities who are trying to promote food processing. If you happen to visit to NIFTM website, they got many incubators in there where the budding entrepreneurs can look at how do they promote food processing, and there's a huge headroom for to reduce the wastage. And I would say that we are still very early in terms of this entire journey, in very early stages. So a lot has to happen, and I think government is also picking up, and we as industry or academia has to try and see what opportunities are there. We can partner and look at bigger opportunities to promote food processing.
Good, great. Thank you. Thanks, Abhinav. Thank you so much. Priyanka, is there any other question?
No, sir.
Okay, great. If that is the case, then let me also take this opportunity on behalf of FICCI to thank Dr. Khanuja and all my friends from the industry for their wonderful time, wonderful thoughts. I'm sure the audience would have really got benefited from these ideas. Some of them were really, really thought-provoking ideas for me personally. So thank you so much for that. And I can understand actually the value of sparing time. You all are busy actually in their respective areas and respective, but you spare time and then come out here for the benefits of the larger folks and for the benefits of the countries. That is really appreciated by FICCI. Thank you so much. Thank you so much once again. So we can conclude.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you all.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Be in touch.
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.